This video is brought to you by Incogniti.
To go to the waste, fraud, and abuse that exists inside of Social Security.
Boo! Liar, liar, liar.
Come out from Doge, love Doge.
Dude, Trump's lying about tariffs and Social Security? No surprise there. Of course, he's getting booed by the crowd. You've got to see this. He did an interview on Fox News this morning, and I can show you in just one short clip how completely incoherent his tariff policy is. It explains why his popularity is dropping and why Republican reps are getting booed left and right. I'll break it all down, but first, just watch this clip.
There is a chance that the money from tariffs could be so great that it would replace, in the old days, about 1870 to 1913, the tariffs were the only form of money. And that's when our nation was relatively the richest. We were the richest.
Trump has floated the idea of replacing the income tax with tariffs, but there are tons of problems with that, and one of the biggest is how contradictory his goals are. One day, he says he wants to rebuild America's supply chains and bring back so much manufacturing that we barely need to import anything. But if we're not importing anything, there's nothing to place tariffs on, which means there's nothing to tax, so you can't fund the government that way. Those ideas don't add up. Then the next day, he'll claim the tariffs are just a tool for gaining leverage in trade negotiations. But that contradicts the domestic manufacturing goal, too, because if you're using tariffs to negotiate trade deals, you're re-engaging in global trade, the very thing he says he's trying to avoid. Every excuse Republicans come up with to defend Trump's tariff policy ends up clashing with another one. It's a mess. That's a big reason why his popularity is sinking. Just look at GOP Representative Brian Mast. He got booed at a town hall for defending tariffs, Doge, and Trump himself, whose approval is slipping more and more. Check out this clip for proof.
Yeah, we'll focus in on independents here, and independents feel that Donald Trump has vacated the center of the electorate, catering to his base. What are we talking about? Well, let's talk about the overall net approval ratings. We're going to look at the worst ever at this point in a presidency. The old record among independents for the worst ever was Donald Trump back in 2016, a net approval rating of minus 16 points. Well, Donald Trump has broken his own record here. He now holds, in this particular term, the worst ever net approval rating at this point in a presidency among independents at, get this, minus 22 points. He is 22 points underwater with independents. That breaks the old record that belonged to Trump. He has set the new record. He is completely underwater with the center of the electorate.
America first, baby. We are setting records here.
Of the electorate, Kate Baldwin.
And this is overall. This is on all the issues. Now, focus in specifically on the economy.
Yeah, let's focus in on the economy, right? What is driving this overall approval rating for Donald Trump among independents to go underwater? Let's take a look at the economy. And let's take a look at Trump's net approval rating on it and look at the trend line over just the last few months. You go back to January, he was slightly above water with independents at plus 1 point. Look at this drop, Kate.
Spoiler alert, sorry to spoil it. It's the tariffs. It's also the unpredictability and the lack of transparency with the tariffs. There's no real stated objective. There's no coherent goal, as I think I demonstrated earlier in the video.
9 points. That's a 30-point drop in under 3 months of time. What independents are hearing from Donald Trump, they hate. They hate what they're hearing from Donald Trump, and they are abandoning him in record numbers. At this point in his last presidency, he was about at 0 points in terms of his net approval rating on the economy, and now he's at minus 29 points. You go back through the record books, I simply put, Kate Baldwin, can't find anything close to this. This is such a record that there is no historical analogy to be 29 points underwater on the most important issue of the day with independents. This right here, my dear friends, is political poison. If an election were held today and Donald Trump's net approval rating in the economy was minus 29 points with independents, I'm not quite sure how Republicans can hold on to the House.
He got completely roasted. And that brings us to GOP Representative Brian Mast, who was met with relentless boos after defending not just Elon Musk, but also the tariffs. Take a listen.
To to go to the waste, fraud, and abuse that exists inside of Social Security.
Boo! Liar, liar, liar.
Come out from Doge, love Doge, could be.
Exactly. Why on earth would you bring up Doge while talking about Social Security? What was this guy thinking? Read the room, man. Real quick, though, check out this chart showing subscriber growth in Q1 of 2025. The Adam Mack Show outpaced Megyn Kelly, Charlie Kirk, Tucker Carlson, and Benny Johnson on YouTube. If you want to keep helping us dominate the MAGA sphere, hit that subscribe button. Now, watch this clip of Brian Mast getting booed when he tries to defend tariffs.
On U.S. dairy going into Canada. So these are all very specific examples.
That's not a godly thing to say in a church.
And what we're going to get to
Such a potty mouth in a
free
church.
trade for the United States.
So if you listen carefully through all the booing, you'll hear Brian Mast saying that Trump's endgame is supposedly free trade, that the tariffs are just a way to gain leverage over other countries. That's like excuse number 8 at this point from GOP reps. He's saying Trump's trying to pressure other nations into dropping trade barriers altogether, which sure could theoretically work, but that's not even what Trump said in the Fox interview I played earlier. In fact, in that same Fox interview, Trump was talking about possibly deporting U.S. citizens to El Salvador. Yes, actual citizens. And that brings me back to something I always emphasize when it comes to talking about due process. Whether it's with your friends, your family, or coworkers, due process applies to everyone. Not just undocumented immigrants, not just criminals. Everyone in the U.S. should care, because if you're innocent and get denied due process, there's no system left to prove your innocence. I was born here 22 years ago. If I were picked up off the street without due process, how would I prove I belong here? That I didn't commit any crime? That's exactly what happened to Abrao Garcia, who was deported with zero due process. This isn't just about protecting the guilty. It's about making sure the government follows the rules, even when someone's accused of something, because once we accept that there's a group of people who can be denied due process, who can be deported, silenced, or punished without a fair hearing, the door is wide open to expand that group. That's the real danger. Suddenly, that could include an American citizen falsely accused of shoplifting, a protester, someone labeled as disloyal, maybe even you, or someone like me. It could be anyone. Wait, did I even play the Trump clip yet? Let me check.
Could we use it for violent criminals, our own violent criminals?
I call them homegrown criminals.
Yes.
I mean, the
homegrowns.
The ones that grew up and
Yeah.
something went wrong and they hit people over the head with a baseball bat. We have, and push people into subways just before the train gets there, like you see happening sometimes. We are looking into it and we want to do it. I would love
Deporting U.S. citizens. And by the way the Trump admin is doing it with no due process would shoot us right into an authoritarian regime. I've already dug into due process. I'm not going to yap about that anymore. But just to zoom out between the tariffs, between the lack of due process, I do think Trump's approval rating will continue to slip and the resistance will continue to grow. We see massive hands-off protests across the country. We see people standing up at town halls. We see the media space on the left growing faster than the MAGA media space, and that's because of you guys. So if you want to join the movement, subscribe. And really quickly, have you ever Googled something a little bit personal, like, why does my tooth hurt? And then you spend the next week dodging ads for dentists and toothpaste and dental implants, which is kind of creepy, but it also means that data brokers are selling your personal information on the internet. That's why I started using Incog. Not only did Incog make this video possible, but it's like sending a squad of digital lawyers to kick down the doors of data brokers and say, delete this person's information. Let me explain. All I had to do was sign up, tell them whose data to remove, which was mine. So I gave them my information, and then I let them get to work. Over the next month, they removed my personal information from over 150 websites. I've seen a bunch of results. So one weekend, I got less spam emails and less spam calls. About 2 weeks in my personal information wasn't being tracked as much, And the more I use it, the cleaner my online presence gets. So if you're tired of your personal data weirdly following you around the internet, then go to incogn.com/Mockler and use code Mockler for 60% off your annual Incogn plan. That is incogn.com/Mockler. They made this video possible, and they'll make your life more stress-free. As you don't have to chase down your data online one more time, take your personal data back with incogn.com/Mockler. Use code Mockler for 60% off, and thank you for watching.